You stand in a trauma room at 2 a.m., rain dragging against the windows, the scalpel still near your hand. The patient flatlines. The monitors go silent in a way that makes the whole room feel accused. A nurse looks up. A resident waits. Someone will remember what you do next. That is the pressure. Not only the medical fact. The verdict your mind tries to add. It says, if this fails, I am failure. It says, their eyes decide my worth. It says, this room now has authority over my judgment. Epictetus would stop you there. The event is one thing. The meaning added by fear is another. The flatline is real. The rain is real. The watching faces are real. But the sentence your ego writes over the scene is not law. Do not hand assent to panic. Name the impression. Return to the scalpel. Choose the next governable action. The next action begins where the false verdict ends. The patient flatlines. That is the event. It is not an argument. It is not a moral sentence. It is not a public trial. It is a condition in the room at 2 a.m., under fluorescent light, while rain taps the windows and the scalpel rests near your fingers. The mind wants to make the room larger than it is. It wants to pull in your reputation. It wants to pull in your years of training. It wants to pull in the face of the family waiting down the hall, the opinion of the resident beside you, the memory of every case that went wrong, and the private sentence you fear most, I was not enough. That is where the boundary must be drawn. Not gently. Clearly. The outcome is not yours to command. The timing is not yours to command. The body before you is not yours to command, as if reality were an assistant waiting for your preference. The rain is not yours. The monitor is not yours. The silence after the alarm is not yours. The thoughts in the room are not yours. The reputation that may rise or fall after this night is not yours. You may influence some of these things. You may serve them. You may work with all your skill toward the best possible result. But influence is not ownership. This is the first discipline under pressure. Do not mistake responsibility for control. Your responsibility is severe. It is not theatrical. It does not need ego to make it noble. It asks for attention, trained judgment, steady hands, honest communication, and the next correct movement. It asks you to see the event without adding the sentence that makes you the center of it. The patient flatlining is an external event. Serious. Urgent. Real. But the judgment, this proves my worth or destroys it, is not in the monitor. It is not in the room. It is not in the patient's body. It is added by the mind. Epictetus would make you separate the two before you move. Not to slow your duty. To purify it. A surgeon who is ruled by reputation does not become more responsible. He becomes divided. One part of him is treating the patient. Another part is treating the imagined courtroom of other people's eyes. One hand reaches for the scalpel. The other reaches for approval. That division is costly. The room does not need your self-image. It needs your attention. So draw the line. Yours, the judgment you accept. Yours, the assent you give or refuse. Yours, the intention behind the next command. Yours, the attention you return to the scalpel, the team, the measurable facts, the next necessary step. Yours, the discipline not to let fear speak through your mouth. Not yours, whether the patient obeys your hope. Not yours, whether the room praises you. Not yours, whether someone later understands the difficulty of the moment. Not yours, whether failure attaches itself to your name in another person's mind. Not yours, the past events that trained your fear to arrive quickly. You are not asked to govern what cannot be governed. You are asked not to abandon what can. That is the hard mercy of the Stoic boundary. It takes away the fantasy of total command, but it gives back the only authority that was ever truly yours. The scalpel near your hand is not a symbol of dominance over life and death. It is a test of attention. Can you hold the tool without letting the room seize your ruling faculty? Can you act without making the outcome a verdict on your identity? Can you give everything that duty requires and still refuse the lie that failure has authority over your soul? This is not detachment from the patient. It is detachment from the false judgment. Care becomes cleaner when control is clean. Duty becomes sharper when ego stops demanding a verdict. You do not become cold. You become less confused. The flatline gives information. The silent monitor gives information. The team's eyes give information. None of them gives law to your character. The law of your character is written in what you choose next. So before the next word, before the next movement, before fear borrows your voice, make the boundary again. This is happening. This is urgent. This is not proof of who I am. My part is judgment, assent, intention, attention, and the next right action. The boundary has been drawn. Now the mind must be watched at the point where it gives consent. The flatline enters first as an impression. It arrives before philosophy, before language, before any clean argument. The monitor stops giving its ordinary rhythm. The silence strikes the room. The nurse turns. The resident looks to you. Rain keeps hitting the glass as if the world outside has no concern for what is happening inside. The impression says, urgent. That part may be accurate. The impression says, act. That may also be accurate. But then something else attaches itself. It comes fast. It sounds like truth because it arrives under pressure. This is on me. If this ends badly, I am exposed. If the room sees me fail, then failure is what I am. That is no longer impression. That is judgment. Epictetus would not let you confuse them. An impression is the first appearance of a thing. A patient flatlines. A room goes silent. Faces turn toward you. These are appearances. They reach the mind. They ask for attention. A judgment is what the mind says about the appearance. It is the verdict added afterward. It is the sentence that claims meaning. The danger is not that impressions arrive. They will arrive. The world will keep presenting events without asking your permission. The danger is that you assent before examination. Assent is the inner yes. It is the moment you accept the judgment as law. Not the moment you feel pressure. Not the moment the monitor changes. Not the moment someone looks at you. The critical moment is when your ruling faculty says yes to the sentence, "This outcome decides my worth." That is the trap. Because once you assent to that judgment, your next action is no longer clean. You may still move quickly. You may still speak with authority. You may still appear controlled. But underneath, fear has taken command. Ego has entered the room wearing the mask of duty. Then your words sharpen for the wrong reason. Your pause disappears. Your attention narrows around how you are being seen. The scalpel becomes less a tool and more a witness against you. The silent monitor becomes a judge. The team becomes a jury. Nothing outside has changed in that instant. Only assent has been given to a false meaning. This is why the Stoic discipline is severe. It does not ask whether the scene is serious. Of course it is serious. It does not ask you to pretend the outcome does not matter. That would be foolish. It asks a harder question. Will you let the seriousness of the event create a false authority over your judgment? The patient's condition deserves your skill. It does not deserve your panic. The room deserves clear instruction. It does not deserve ego defending itself. The moment deserves full attention. It does not deserve the added fiction that your identity is being weighed by the monitor. So the chain must be seen. Event, the patient flatlines. Impression, this is urgent, threatening, demanding response. Judgment, if this fails, I am failure. Assent, I accept that judgment, and now fear gets to govern my next word, pause, movement, or refusal. Action, I speak from fear. I rush to protect image. I grip the scalpel as if control over the tool were control over the outcome. Break the chain before action hardens. Name the impression. This appears urgent. Name the judgment. My mind is saying this decides my worth. Refuse assent. That judgment is not in the event. Then return to what can be governed. Attention to the scalpel. Attention to the team. Attention to the next command. Attention to the facts in the room, not the imagined verdict outside it. This is not hesitation. It is command of the ruling faculty. A pause before assent can be shorter than a breath and still change the source of the action. The hand may still move. The voice may still direct. The work may still be immediate. But now it comes from judgment examined, not judgment swallowed. The room still waits. The rain still falls. The monitor is still silent. But the mind no longer has permission to turn silence into a sentence about your soul. The mind no longer has permission to turn silence into a sentence about your soul. Now discipline has to enter the hand. Ascesis is not a speech you give yourself after the crisis. It is the training inside the crisis. It is the small, repeated act of bringing judgment back under command while the trauma room still demands speed. It is 2 a.m. The rain has not stopped. The monitor is still silent. The team is still watching. The scalpel is still near your hand. Ego still wants to make the room about reputation. So the practice must be exact. First, pause before assent. Not a dramatic pause. Not a delay that abandons duty. A clean inward stop. The kind that keeps one false sentence from entering the chain of action. Before the next command leaves your mouth, before your hand tightens around the scalpel, you notice the pressure to believe, this failure will define me. You do not argue with the room. You examine the judgment. Second, name the impression. This appears urgent. That is enough. Do not add, this is proof that I am ruined. Do not add, everyone is measuring me. Do not add, the outcome must obey my preference. The first appearance may be sharp, but it is not sovereign. The silent monitor reports a condition. It does not issue a verdict. Third, identify the false sentence. The real enemy is not the flat line. The real enemy is the judgment error wearing the clothing of responsibility. If this ends badly, I am failure. That sentence must be seen. If it remains hidden, it will steer the hand while pretending to be duty. It will make the voice harsh. It will make the eyes hunt for approval. It will make the resident's face more important than the next clear instruction. So say it inwardly. My mind is trying to make failure higher than choice. That is the correction point. Fourth, return attention to the scalpel. Feel the tool as tool. Not as proof of power. Not as a symbol of your identity. Not as a witness for or against your name. Steel, handle, weight, placement. A thing used by attention. A thing governed by the hand only when the mind is governed first. The scalpel tests whether you are present. If you grip it to defeat shame, ego is holding it. If you take it up to perform the next necessary action, judgment has returned to its post. Fifth, give the next command cleanly. Short words. Clear words. No performance. You do not need to sound heroic. You do not need to punish the room with urgency. You do not need to prove you are calm. You need the next right instruction, spoken from examined judgment. The team does not need your fear translated into volume. They need order. Sixth, keep the boundary in the body. Shoulders down. Eyes on the fact. Hands steady enough for the task. Breath serving attention, not drama. The resident's look is not law. The nurse's silence is not law. The later story people tell is not law. The only law in your possession is the law you give your own assent. Seventh, repeat when the impression returns. It will return. Pressure does not disappear because you named it once. Ego's fear of failure is trained. It knows how to re-enter through the side door. It will use the quiet monitor. It will use the rain. It will use the waiting faces. It will use the word responsibility and try to make it mean total control. Refuse that substitution every time. Responsibility means you govern what is yours. It does not mean you command the outcome. So the practice continues in small movements. Pause. Name. Separate. Return. Choose. Speak. Act. Repeat. This is not a checklist for comfort. It is training for authority over the ruling faculty. The trauma room remains difficult. The event remains urgent. The patient's condition still demands everything skill can give. But the mind has stopped adding a second emergency, the emergency of defending the self-image. That second emergency was never duty. It was vanity under pressure. And once it is seen, it loses command. Once vanity under pressure loses command, responsibility becomes less dramatic and more exact. That is where conduct begins. You are still in the trauma room. It is still 2 a.m. The rain still moves against the windows. The patient has not become a lesson for your ego. The silent monitor has not become a judge. The scalpel is still a tool near your hand, and the room still needs ordered action. Duty does not ask you to feel untouched. Duty asks you to act from the part of you that can still be governed. That means your conduct must not depend on whether the outcome is already favorable. It must not depend on whether the resident looks confident. It must not depend on whether the nurse's silence feels like trust or accusation. It must not depend on whether your name will be protected when the night is reviewed later. Those things may matter in the world. They do not get to command the ruling faculty. Responsibility now becomes visible in small, severe choices. You speak clearly instead of sharply. You assign the next task without using the team as a place to throw your fear. You keep your attention on what can be measured, done, checked, repeated. You do not turn urgency into harshness and call it leadership. You do not turn uncertainty into blame and call it honesty. You do not turn fear of failure into speed without judgment and call it courage. The patient flatlining is not permission to abandon character. It is the moment character is tested without ceremony. Epictetus would not excuse careless conduct because the room was hard. He would also not demand that you command what nature has not placed under your authority. The standard is not total success. The standard is right use of what is yours. That standard is narrow. That is why it is strong. Your next word is yours. Your next movement is yours. Your intention in giving an order is yours. Your willingness to correct a mistake without defending your image is yours. Your refusal to make a bad outcome into proof of personal worthlessness is yours. But the result is not fully yours. The past is not yours. The weather is not yours. The private judgment of every person in the room is not yours. The story later told about this night is not yours to own in advance. When you confuse these, conduct decays. You begin managing appearances while pretending to manage duty. You look for signs that others still believe in you. You hear the silent monitor as an accusation. You grip the scalpel with more force than attention. You make the room serve your self-image. That is not responsibility. That is fear seeking a costume. Real responsibility is cleaner. It says, I will not hide from my role. I will not surrender my judgment to the outcome. I will not use pressure as an excuse to become careless, cruel, vain, or confused. I will give the scene what belongs to the scene, and I will not add what belongs only to ego. This is the surgeon's discipline. Not to become stone. Not to pretend the stakes are light. But to stand inside high stakes without letting high stakes write the law of the mind. The scalpel reminds you of this. It does not ask for panic. It does not ask for reputation. It does not ask whether the room approves of your inner state. It asks for a governed hand. And the governed hand begins with governed assent. So conduct returns to duty. Watch the fact. Test the judgment. Give the order. Use the tool. Correct what can be corrected. Accept what is not in your command without using acceptance as an excuse to withdraw effort. That last point matters. A Stoic does not say, the outcome is not mine, and then give less. He says, because the outcome is not mine, I will stop wasting attention on ownership and give my full strength to the action that is mine. That is responsibility without vanity. That is duty without self-worship. That is the work in front of you at 2 a.m., while the rain continues and the room waits for your next governed act. Freedom begins when the outcome stops pretending to be your master. The trauma room has not become easy. The hour is still late. The rain is still there. The monitors have not apologized for their silence. The patient's body has not agreed to your preference simply because your duty is sincere. Reality does not bend because the stakes are high. That is why freedom cannot mean control over the scene. It must mean command over assent inside the scene. A free surgeon is not one who always gets the result he wants. That would make freedom depend on chance, biology, timing, weather, history, and the hidden weakness of the body on the table. That would make freedom fragile. It would come and go with the monitor. Epictetus would not call that freedom. Freedom is the trained refusal to let an external event become a verdict over the ruling faculty. So when the room demands a verdict, you do not give it your soul. You give it your work. You give it attention. You give it steady hands. You give it clear words. You give it the discipline to separate fact from fear. You give it the courage to act without pretending you own what nature has not placed in your hands. The scalpel is still there. At the beginning, it could feel like a witness against you. In the middle, it became a test of attention. Now it becomes a reminder of freedom. Not freedom from duty. Freedom inside duty. You are free when you can hold the tool without worshiping the outcome. You are free when the resident's eyes do not write your judgment. You are free when the silent monitor gives information, not identity. You are free when failure is treated as an external condition, not as a ruler over choice. This does not make the work smaller. It makes it honest. The patient still deserves everything skill can give. The team still deserves clarity. The family still deserves truth when the time comes. The record still deserves accuracy. Your profession still deserves disciplined conduct. None of that disappears. But the false burden falls away. You no longer have to be the owner of life and death in order to be responsible. You no longer have to secure every reputation before you can act. You no longer have to turn fear into authority. The scene may still be severe. But severity is not sovereignty. The flat line is an event. The silence is an impression. The fear of failure is a shadow. The judgment is the place of danger. Assent is the place of freedom. Stand there. At 2 a.m. In the rain. With the scalpel near your hand. Do the next right act without giving the outcome the power to name you. Return to what is yours to govern.